Over the years, I've received a bunch of very interesting comments on my channel, from people describing their own experiences with the unexplained. In this video, I want to read some of those comments on a category that I think is one of the creepiest, which is weird experiences in the backcountry, in the bush, in the wilderness. Now, before I continue, if anybody is familiar with this channel and is wondering why I sound so unpolished in this video, this is my attempt to combat the endless stream of comments that I get. Like, almost every day I get comments like this from people assuming that I'm AI, whatever that means. And the reason I take this so seriously is because the use of AI in video making seems to have become like a cardinal sin on YouTube. And it'll like render videos unwatchable for people. And I'll get comments from people on old videos I made like 4 or 5 years ago saying, this video would be so good if it wasn't AI. Where it's just me talking, there's no AI in it. AI didn't really exist back then, or at least not the way it does now. So this is my attempt to prove that I'm not a robot, I'm a real person. And the reason I think this will help achieve that is because, as far as I know, AI can't do this this podcast style narration, or a better way of putting it maybe is it won't do as many mistakes as I do. And for people who like my regular style videos, don't worry, I'm still going to do them. So don't worry, this is not going to become like my main thing or anything. But anyway, let's get into these comments. These are really spooky. Okay, now this first one is 5 years ago, and it's from Snoot Dingo 9365. And he says, in the winter of 2008, a friend and I decided to head out to a nearby reservoir/state forest to hike out to one of the cabana-like shelters they constructed in the 1920s near the new dam. It is made of glacial stone, has 2 hearths in the interior, and on the backside of both of the hearth walls there is an oven/stove tops that vent into the hearth chimneys. It's a great place any time of the year, as there are waterfalls and lots of unique areas to explore nearby. It was around 1 a.m. when we arrived. As we got to about a half-mile distance to the shelter, we both began feeling nervous. The closer we got, the worse it became. When we were at a quarter mile distance, we were bombarded by an unnatural fear. I have never before or since felt such an irrational fear in a place I've been to dozens of times in the past at night, when I was the only human in probably the entire gigantic forest. As we made visual contact with the shelter, we stopped. We started hearing footsteps in the forest coming from the left side of the shelter. We had weapons, high-intensity lights, and both of us were very familiar with handling them, and familiar with this place. The steps are very long strides, made by something or someone walking upright on 2 legs. We turned on all of our lights, and pointed them at the area where the sound was emanating. Nothing was there, and the sound ceased, and began coming from the other side of the forest around the shelter. By now, my friend turned and ran, and I was frozen in fear. She came back yelling at me to come on. I turned and ran as well. We saw nothing. There are 2 things I need to include in this. A cold front was sweeping through this exact time. It was now about minus 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I do Celsius. What is minus 5 degrees Fahrenheit? Okay, so for any Canadians or British people or Australians listening, that's minus 20 degrees Celsius. Fairly cold. The other fact, it snowed earlier that evening, and there wasn't a single track in the snow. No car tracks, cross-country ski tracks, animal tracks, none. The further we got away from the area, the more our fear lessened. I talked to a couple of people about that night, and one of them mentioned Wendigo. I had never heard this term before. I don't really think or know what it was, but I've only been back there 2 or more times in the daylight with others. Could it have been that? Or has anyone heard of anyone else having an experience like this? I can only say that I am an avid outdoorsman, and I grew up in the forests of North Indiana. I have many years of experience backpacking, camping, etc. I would very much like to get to the bottom of whatever this was. Now, this is a common theme that you'll notice in this video. People will have this. They'll come to a place and they get struck by this extremely powerful, inexplicable sense of fear. And I don't know what causes that. Have you ever had that before? I've had that before, actually, a few times. This one time, I don't know if I should tell the story. Yeah, maybe I'll tell it another time. I think I'm going to reserve this video for my viewer comments. Okay, let's keep going. Next one is from, oh boy, Falafel? No. Felafniralek, 8987. This is 5 years ago. I've lived in the shadow of Pikes Peak all my life, Colorado Springs, and I frequently hike with my family. I always take up the rear of the group to make sure my younger siblings don't fall behind. I've experienced the silence many times, and I always feel like I've been watched when it happens. This isn't a response to a video that I made on my friend Mateo Arguello's weird experiences on Pikes Peak, which is where he and his friend were walking at night, and his friend saw this weird, skinny, human-like figure, like a kind of a silhouette of it with antlers, and it freaked him out. And Mateo told me about the story, and I did a video on it with his permission. And that's what this is in reference to. In the silence, I assume, is where this is another common theme you'll hear in these stories, where the entire forest will go silent. Like you don't hear any bugs, you don't hear any birds, you don't hear any leaves in the wind. It's just completely quiet, which is unnerving. So let's keep going here. Dave D. Grunt, 4 years ago. About 10 years ago, my son and I stopped in the redwoods of North California. We walked into the timber a few yards and stopped. Dead quiet. Total silence. The hair on my neck and arms started to stand up. All of my nerves were going wild. I said to him, "Let's go." We turned and walked back to the truck. He didn't say anything until in the truck. He said, "That was effing creepy." He rarely swears. Something got to him also. I'm convinced someone or something was there in the timber also. Human? Animal? I'll never know. So another example of what the previous commenter called the silence. Alright, let's go to the next one. Backcountry D52. Being from Colorado and backpacking for weeks on end in the Lost Creek and Indian Peak Wilderness area, have only one experience with this type of experience. Not having seen but my fellow backpacker have whatever he saw follow him to his house, and weeks later drove him to madness, and eventually caused his demise. Ooh, something exists. That sounds dark. Next one is Dominic Walker, 9947, 5 years ago. I've had the same feeling of being stalked in the woods of in the woods of South Lake Tahoe. Was pretty tuned to that environment, knew the sounds and such, had been camping to save on rent. One night I was headed in and remember being lackadaisical, humming a tune thinking about nothing important, and when felt like I hit a brick wall all of a sudden. Every nerve on end, cocking the head to try to pick up a sound. My subconscious stepped in or something. Looking back, it was exhilarating. Never felt anything so real, without visual cue. I'm not going to say that word, was jumping off, and your pants are around your ankles. Didn't see anything. Moved to camp because that's where I left my equalizer. A recreation katana that would have... this is equalizer. A recreation katana that would have snapped the first time it was used for real. That's funny. Give me a break. I was 19, and I thought it was a based... I can't say that word. Anyway, got to camp, got to the catalog sword, and felt better. Come light, I couldn't find tracks of anything out of the ordinary. This guy's funny. Didn't see or hear. Couldn't hear above my heart anything, although every fiber of my being knew something. Uncool, okay? Had me in its peepers. Now I've chased black bears off, stuck my head out of a tent, and screamed off a mountain lion. Also got punked by a raccoon the size of a dog. That's another story. So the wilderness isn't a scary place in my eyes. Whatever that was scared me stupid. To this day, nothing has put the fear in me like that. Okay, next one. Endomorphin, 5 years ago. I grew up in McCall, Idaho in the 70s and 80s, and spent a lot of time in forests. No road access wilderness areas, and hiking to lakes without regular hiking trails, and had some negative paranormal experiences during that time as well as my mother seeing a bipedal ape humanoids in the backcountry, and that she could not accept as real, as well as an incident with my father breaking camp in the middle of the night, even though we would have to wake a sheriff to get gas at a small town on the way home, because he had heard something he felt wasn't human, with the evil intent possibly lurking around the camp. He felt his kids were in direct harm's way. He even left his float tubing fins on accident at the camp, and the next day we had to go back and get them. That was when I was 9 to 10. 5 years before that, a group of 20-some people, my mother's friends and some good Sam conservative types, that were facing off at a campground in Canada because... Sorry, I have to bring my laptop closer, I can't see. Because of my mom's friend's rowdy, late-night campground arrival, not technically allowed in the campground rules, we're heading towards a physical altercation. Something overtook me, and at age 4, I walked between the two groups facing off and performed a large, sudden standing backflip. My mother said it looked like something picked me up and threw me into the air, an unnatural feat performed by a child that didn't do standing backflips, and even into adulthood, have only launched backflips on trampolines. The action of me backflipping stunned the adults and stopped the ensuing altercation, and within a few weeks of return to our hometown, gained me the reputation of being a child with issues. And after that, I started having horror-filled visits by beings in the middle of the night, for some reason trying to teach me incantations. Ugh. Years later, after some strange visits over the years that I couldn't quite accept as being real, I faced the onslaught of paranormal events on a daily basis, with other people confirming in certain situations that an entity of some sort is present around me. That is witnesses to the paranormal funk that has occasionally befallen me, that has now turned chronic. Now, obviously I don't know the whole scenario here, but this story reminds me a lot of situations where I like to read and listen to stories of Catholic exorcists. I find them really interesting, and this reminds me a lot of stories where people, like children, will so the way Catholic exorcists say that the way people can become oppressed and possessed by demons is usually by performing some ritual or something like, like a Ouija board or something more like an occult ritual. But another way is if they are cursed by somebody, like somebody who is like a witch, uh, will put a curse on them, and through that, a demon will start bothering this person. Another way I've heard, this is especially historical with saints and stuff, if a saint is extremely pious, extremely holy, and does a very good job of, I guess, doing God's will, not sinning, demons will take offense to that and will bother these saints. There's so many stories of saints being constantly pestered by demons. But anyway, to make a long story short, this reminds me a lot of stories where children will get cursed by some family member who puts a curse on them, and some demon or host of demons will bother them for the rest of their lives or until they get a successful exorcism that drives these demons away. So that's what this at least evokes for me. Let's go to the next one. Oh, this is a long comment. GBro8822, 5 years ago. I live in northern Indiana, and I have a true story I'd like to share with you. We have a cabin about 300 miles north of Thunder Bay, Ontario. We drive till the road stops, then take a float plane to our cabin. My dad built our cabin in '68, and we go up 3 times a year. The end of May, mid-July, and early September. One fall trip, maybe 15 or 20 years ago now, we went to a portage to a different lake. In the spring and fall, if the weather was cool, we would go after some lake trout. If I had to take a guess, I have been on that lake 30 or 40 times now. We are the only cabin on our lake, and there was no cabins in the lake trout lake. We have 3 small boats we just leave on that lake because we go there so often. We had 6 men and 3 boats that day. We all kind of went on our own way and started fishing. It was maybe 4 hours later, around 2 or 3 p.m. All 3 boats meet back up in the middle of the lake, and we all killed our engines and started to eat our lunch. It was a beautiful sunny day, with no clouds, and the lake went completely flat, no wind at all. Okay, now, this is the part where you're going to think I'm nuts, so here I go. The first sound came from our north, the way back to our lake. The best way I can describe it was somebody holding a note on a freaking pipe organ. The notes were perfect, not flat or anything like that. The notes would last maybe 5 to 8 seconds. That's a long time to hold a perfect note. When the one would die out, another would start from a different shore at a higher or lower note, but all just perfect and sounded like a pipe organ. All the sounds were just single notes. We never heard 2 different notes at the same time. This lasted for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. We all 6 were hearing 20-plus pipe organs play single notes around a lake, with no cabins in the Canadian wilderness. The notes were extremely loud, like feel it in your chest loud, with no wind, and land no more than 400 yards away in any direction. The notes would echo around a bit. My brother did not want to make the portage, so we stayed in our lake with one of my uncles. Later, back in our cabin, we were all telling our uncle and brother what we heard. They both said they could also hear the notes coming from our direction. We never saw a thing, and I don't know what we heard. We didn't see anything on the ground, nothing in the area. Nothing in the trees or water, and boy, we were all looking. About the only thing I do know, there is no pipe organs around that lake. We have been back to that many times, and nothing. Over the years, we have all asked state biologists. They look at me like I'm nuts. I have even asked a First Nations friend from that area. At least he gave me a kind of answer. He said some things in nature are best left unknown. I was so ready to find out, and that's what I got. I'm the last one of the 8 people still alive who heard the pipe organ notes around a lake in the Canadian wilderness. I don't have a clue what was making that sound. But something was, I'm going to try to find out what. Thank you, Greg. P.S. I did find a guy from Northeast Ontario, and asking him if he ever heard anything like that, like we did. This is his response. Wow, very interesting, Greg. I have never heard pipe organs, but yes, I did have one strange sound encounter. Way back on native land, taking photos of moose. Well, looking for moose anyway. The wind suddenly picked up as I moved down a trail towards the river I was going to check. It was like a storm was going to blow in. It actually got dark. There was no big thunderclouds, though. Then off in a distance, I heard mumbling. Couldn't make it out. It got louder. It was chanting, like native chanting, and there was a distant drum beat. The sound got closer and closer as I stood there. Then it was all around me. I could hear as clear as day, Indians singing, just like a drum festival. It lasted about 30 seconds, and then just faded away. It was not like a sound off in the distance. It came and surrounded me, and then vanished. Within a minute or so, the sun was back out, and it was like nothing happened. It was at least 5 miles away from any houses that I know of. It was very strange, but oddly I did not find it terrifying. I didn't leave the woods. I didn't feel threatened. So that last story reminds me very much of, there was a Northwest Mounted Police officer named Cecil Denny, who became, I think, the official historian for the Northwest Mounted Police. He was one of the first, I think he was actually one of the first members of the force. He went out with them in 1875, out from Fort Dufferin to Fort Whoop-Up. So he was part of the first wave of Mounties to come out west. And he had an experience on Fort McLeod, which is their first permanent headquarters. That's kind of west of Lethbridge, and it was on the Old Man River. And he was fishing one day, and he was off duty fishing, and I've done a video on this before. You might have seen it. I've referenced it several times. But he was out fishing, and he heard this. A storm came in, just like this guy said, and lots of lightning, and it was raining, and he wanted to take shelter, and he started hearing this native drumming in the woods, and he started following it, and he came to a clearing in the woods where there was a native camp with teepees, with lodges. And but the weird thing was, he said that it looked like they were acting as if it wasn't raining. Like the lodge flaps are open, people were walking around, and he says it kind of glowed with an unnatural light. And he was kind of weirded out, started walking towards this place, and suddenly a lightning bolt hit a tree next to him, and he fell down, completely stunned, thunderstruck. And when he came to his senses, this place was gone. And so he freaked out, went back to Fort McLeod, and told everybody what had happened. They were all laughing at him. And the next morning he went back there with a Blackfoot scout, I think, and he went to the place, and the scout said, "Oh, this is where my people slaughtered a band of Cree some years ago, a massacre." And they looked around, and they found some skulls in the underbrush. And this is one of the stories that I think, when you hear ghost stories, a lot of times people say that they'll feel cold when they see a ghost or something like that, or it takes the energy out of the room or something. And the idea that seems to suggest, I think, is that ghosts need energy to manifest. And so lightning storms, there's a lot of energy in lightning. Maybe that's why a lot of people see ghosts in lightning storms. And I have other stories like that too. But the first story reminds me very much of, the story of the guy hearing pipe organs in the lake reminds me of it was one of the big surveying groups there was Henry Palliser surveyed Western Canada. This is in the 60s or 50s, I think. I think in the 1860s. I can't remember. I think it was the 1860s. There was Henry Palliser, who was sponsored by the British, and there was John Palliser, sponsored by the British, and Henry Ewell Hind was sponsored by the Canadians, and they both did these kind of simultaneous. I don't think it was at exactly the same time, but it was close. And they did these surveying expeditions surveying Western Canada, and I think it was Henry Ewell Hind, one of his party, maybe even Hind himself, was on. I think it was Lake Winnipeg, and he heard something really weird, the way he described it. And I covered it in a video on I think like haunted lakes or like creepy lakes in Canada. I think so. If you watch that video, you can find it, and it was some instrument. It might have been pipe organs. Uh, I think it might have been pipe organs, or maybe it was church bells. Maybe that's what it was, church bells. But he heard something weird when he was on Lake Winnipeg, I think. So anyway, that's what that reminds me of. Anyway, sorry for the long rant. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is 3 years ago. Kent Newman, 5209. After reading, this is a response to my comment, I guess. After reading this, in addition to the other stuff from the Nahanni Valley, cryptids, etc., it makes me think there must be some kind of time portal there. Time slips, or thins out, or something. I suspect other similar places exist also. None bigger than in Canada, though. Skinwalker Ranch may be one of those places. Probably anywhere the Indians considered sacred or cursed. My friend claims to have seen a mountain lion, a pterodactyl, and a Sasquatch on separate occasions near a small town in southwest Minnesota called Delhi, in an area near an old abandoned gold mine that the locals call Gold Mine. It is in a river valley. She also has experienced an invisible runner, heard approaching from a distance, running so close by her campfire that it moved the flame and pulled cinders in its wake, thumping the ground as it went past, ending before entering Beaver Creek, which she was camped about 20 feet away from. I've experienced a black mist floating through her home in North Redwood Falls, Minnesota, also a river valley on 2 occasions. Also something I can only describe as similar to a movie being projected into the woods, lasting less than 10 seconds. Winter, about 4 a.m., I walk around a corner of her house and see it across the street in the woods. A large square lit up an area of the woods, about the size of a garage door, with men running through the snow and branches. I can hear their feet pounding the ground and see their legs running, although I can't recall what they were wearing, and see and hear the branches giving way to their path. Then it's just gone, like a switch shut off. After the sun comes up, I go look in the snow, and there is nothing. No footprints, no broken branches. Haven't seen anything odd for a few years now. I wonder if things like this aren't cyclical. Maybe cosmic things have to be lined up just right, like remote viewing is most successful when the Earth is facing away from the center of the galaxy. Interesting, I've never heard that before. Okay, next one is 1 year ago, always equals 50. Years ago, I went on a canoe trip with my native people. My group eventually got separated from the main group, so there were only 2 canoes with about 10-ish people. During a portage, we took a break before taking off. I tried to find a place to rest, and I kind of went too far, and I saw an old man who quickly got angry at me and told me to go back. I did because he kind of scared me, and although he was with us, it took me till we took off before realizing he wasn't anywhere around. I told this to everyone, and they told me to never bring it up again. I think whatever it was saved me. Ooh, interesting. The next one is Final Affliction, 3 years ago. I used to live in Gatineau, that's Quebec, and I'm telling you for a fact that the Gatineau Park Woods are haunted or has some bad things inside. I used to film videos on YouTube for another channel there, with actors, and it was insane. That sounds fun, doing videos with actors. I should do that sometime. Interesting. So the Gatineau Park Woods are haunted, or has something bad in it. I gotta keep that in mind. Julie Saucy, 3529. This is 11 months ago. Hello, I'm from the North Shore of Quebec. I spoke to an elderly Montagnais friend, and he told me this. So Montagnais are native people from, like, Labrador, I think. Labrador and, like, northern Quebec. My grandfather was from Essipit, an indigenous community near the north coast village of Les Comé. I don't know how to say that. Let's check where this is. Okay, so it's on like I guess the St. Lawrence Delta. Is that considered the Gulf of St. Lawrence? I'm not sure. Okay, not too far from. I did a story on sea serpents in the St. Lawrence, and there's a bunch of stories from. They call it the North Shore. I guess that's what they call it there, and it's this. I'm sure this would be considered the North Shore as well. Interesting. This is where some people saw a giant sea serpent. What is this big river? Saguenay River. Okay. And his territory was located near Lac Le Coeur. He told us stories that resembled the Wendigo. He called them uinitekau, who likes to scare. Oh, that sounds creepy. He said that he did not like excessive hunting and waste. He was like a guardian of the forest and the animals. He came to disturb those who were excessive, and he could transform himself into an ogre and steal children to punish these families. These stories scared me when we were in the forest hunting small game. Okay, and this was originally in French. That is really creepy. He who likes to scare, and that's a story. I don't know if I've ever heard of that in Canada, like a kind of elemental spirit that it punishes people for excess, for like maybe hunting too much or fishing too much. No, that's not true. I have heard. There's a story like that I covered about little people. I think it's from the States though. It's like a Wendat story. No, no, I'm sorry. It's an Iroquois story. Yeah, an Iroquois story about little people that would punish hunters for hunting too much, for being excessive, being too greedy, taking more than they needed from the environment. So that's interesting. Okay, next one is Michael Belmont, 5305, 4 years ago. I live in, I think it says Northeast Georgia. I've been through the same thing. I know what they are. The way it started was by my decision to throw a stone into the woods due to a noise I was hearing. I must have nailed this thing painfully, because it was pissed something serious. It began barking at me and moved with an unreal speed to bark more at me from different areas, still staying where I could not see it. I began to do my own war bark I began to do my own war bark back at it, while throwing more stones. It eventually quit. But some nights I'm awakened by trees being knocked over, unusual howls, rocks thrown into my yard, and other unusual events. It's no joke, no lie. I wish it was because they had followed me ever since. Why would you wish that? They are remnants of something ancient. They are Nephilim. And if Christ's words are true, and I believe they are, mankind is in for a very hard time in the future. So Nephilim, I don't know if they might be referenced very briefly in Genesis, but I think they're talked about, fleshed out a lot in the Book of Enoch, which is an old book that I think it's only in the Ethiopian Bible, as far as I'm aware, Nephilim. And they're supposed to be fallen angels, or the progeny of fallen angels and humans, I think. All right, next one is Scour Neen, 3 years ago. I lived in BC for 20 years. I'm from Northern Ontario originally, and I'm back here now. These videos are really bringing up all the memories. I lived my dreams there. I know many of the areas in the first two vids very well. I've heard of many stories of various deaths in the mountains. I'm surprised I got through as well as I did myself. I was a real daredevil, did tons of backcountry trips solo in all seasons. Was wiped out in 2 avalanches. Wow! That's intense. Was struck down by lightning while tree planting in the north. This guy is a madman. Was pulled out of a riptide on the island, and I thought I was done for sure that day, but I worked my way out of it. This guy's a cat, he's got 9 lives. I finished the Stamp, the Vetter, the Fraser, and it was all amazing. Rode amazing lines on my snowboard and mountain bike. I miss it all, but I'm where I'm meant to be, and I'm amazed I made it back. On the island one day I found a dried-up creek that ran into the ocean. In the middle of a sand-bottom creek was a single footprint. How a single footprint in the middle of... I don't know what he's trying... How a single footprint in the middle of has always puzzled me. No footprints leading up to it. Too far to be affected by the tide. The area here as well is full of mystery. Now that's creepy. Next one is Christina Menhenet. Christina Menhenet, 4 years ago. My parents went to Devil's Lake many years ago when my brother was 11. I will never forget the story they tell of what happened to them and what they saw. Later they found out many people disappear over the falls of that lake. They never went back, and to this day the story remains the same, and it is almost 50 years ago. So I don't know, the only Devil's Lake that I think I've talked about, I think there's one in Minnesota, but the only one that I think I've talked about is a tiny little Devil's Lake in they call it the Stein River Provincial Park or something. It's on the western banks of the Fraser River, basically opposite Lytton, I think. I think it's close by. And it's a little lake in the mountains, an alpine lake, and there's lots of really spooky native legends about it. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever read about, actually. It's very spooky. And I think I talk about it in my British Columbia Triangle series. in part 3 about the native legends. But anyway, I don't know if that's the Devil's Lake she's referring to. Next one's the same lady, Christina Manhennet, 1 year ago. They were on a lake with my brother in a boat with 2 large motors on it. Lake appeared calm until my mom suddenly noticed how fast the tree line was going by. She told my dad, who started the motors, remember strong dual motors. Okay, remembering. Nothing. They kept going faster, caught in a current on the lake. Suddenly, a guy in the boat, dressed completely in black, pulled alongside, yet several feet out from them. They yelled for help. He smiled and waved and disappeared. The motors suddenly quit. Dad grabbed the oars while Mom helped hold them in. They weren't making any headway. A small branch was hanging down over the lake and shore. My brother only grabbed it out of desperation. It was so small it shouldn't have held him, let alone the boat with the dual motors and 2 adults. My brother was 12 or 13 at the time. It not only held all the weight, but enabled them to pull to shore, holding on that small branch to a tree they could tie the boat at. They hiked back to the road and my grandmother was waiting, and watching my sister and I. Another boat pulled in with a large boat with 2 very large motors. They talked to him, and he agreed to tow their boat. He said it'd be easy with his setup. I'm sorry, I gotta pull my laptop closer. My eyes are not doing too hot right now. Mom doctored her bleeding hands from holding the oars in, while Dad was trying to row to safety. We went out, just the 3 adults this time. They guided him to the boat. He connected their boat to his. They started to head back when he was starting to have trouble heading back to the dock area. He put his motors on full throttle, and it was touch and go as to whether they'd make it. He'd said that lake was very dangerous. There was a massive waterfall that my parents and brother were heading straight for. Wow. There had been many drownings in that lake. Many reports of a man in black being seen before people would go over the falls. The indigenous people named it Devil's Lake, as they'd known the man forever. That is very spooky. So another Devil's Lake. I don't think that's the same one as the one I was talking about. All right, next one is 2 years ago, Liz Morrison, 4284. On the edge of Green Lake outside of Whistler, spring of 2020, my partner at the time and I were exploring the edges of Parkhurst, little ghost townish spot, when we both stopped in our tracks at the same time. Our hearing had suddenly gone muted with a strange hum, a note increasing in volume and suddenly disappearing. It's like it happened in our ears and not outside of them. The sound returned and birds began to sing again. It was like time stopped. Same thing occurred next to a tiny, unnamed alpine lake in the Crow's Nest Pass about 2 days later, but only to me that time, as I was nosing about for antler sheds and bones. Always thought it was something otherworldly, and yep, I think I was right. Very creepy. I've heard that humming story before. I've heard it from actually a cousin of mine who's had an experience with humming, but I won't talk about that right now. But yeah, so the Whistler, that's Whistler, British Columbia. That's like a ski resort town, quite a ways north of Vancouver on the Sea to Sky Highway, and Crow's Nest Pass is in Alberta. That's like on the number 3 highway. If you go west of Lethbridge, Alberta, you'll go into the mountains, and it's Crow's Nest Pass going through. And, okay, next one is Bow and Whiskers 1 year ago. My cabin's just north of Loon Lake. Now, he doesn't specify which Loon Lake, but I know there's a Loon Lake in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and I think also in British Columbia. So somewhere in Western Canada for sure, I think. One time I was walking on a trail in the woods, and it went eerily quiet. Then I heard snapping and whispering in the dense woods right beside me on the trail. Got the worst feeling and ran out of there. Didn't feel safe until I got to the cut line. I could still hear whispering coming from the direction of the trail I was just on, so I went straight back to my cabin. Maybe it was the Loon Lake Wendigo. My coworker lives just south of Bronson Forest on a farm and says she saw a Sasquatch walk across the road that leads up to the forest. Where's Bronson Forest? Okay, that's Saskatchewan. So this is Loon Lake, Saskatchewan. Okay, that's really creepy. The whispering thing, I've heard, people who are experts in the ghost phenomenon, they call it like magic whispering. I think that's the term I've heard, and a lot of times like ghosts will manifest as like a whispering that you can't quite make out. It's very quiet and it sounds like human whispering, but you can't make out the words. And I've actually had a very, very creepy experience with that myself, but I won't talk about that now. But the thing I heard sounded kind of like the best I can describe it. It's like a bundle of electrically sounding whispering that you can't quite make out the words. I don't know how else to explain it, but anyway, very creepy. Next one is Barnes 466 3 years ago. I was staying in a log cabin home and garage a couple years back, 2017, in Hubley, Nova Scotia, Canada, and it had a house slap event. It was a beautiful Saturday morning, and I was just going back to finish the rest of the garage on the rear left-hand side that day, maybe an hour's worth of work. Anyway, I pull into the driveway and back into my client's wife's parking space and start to look for gear in the back of the bed of the truck when something hit my right-hand leg. It was an acorn. It was like, where did that come from? And there were no trees above me, where I was searching in the bed of my truck. I go back to searching and find what I was looking for. An item landed near my feet. It was a small pebble. I was like, whoa, but did not react physically, I do not believe. I walked into the small patch of woods in between my client's home/property and his neighbor's where I thought the objects were being thrown from, and stood in the silence, trying to hear if anything was dropping to the ground. Nothing. The neighbors were all gone, as well as my client. I proceeded to get my gear and head to the left-hand side of the garage to finish up my work. I'm sitting on a frame ladder on the second rung from the top, with my left arm resting on the roof, on top of the shingles, as I am standing with my right hand. All of a sudden, a huge slap hits the opposite side of the building from me, so the right-hand side, not 30 feet away. It was so strong, I felt it through my left arm. I was in shock, and knew what it could possibly be, as I am a fan of shows like Sasquatch Chronicles and Dogman Encounters. I was very afraid at that moment, as I had been listening to both shows prior to the slap earlier. My immediate thought was to get up onto the roof, but I waited on top of the ladder, waiting to see if I could hear anything else. The garage itself was surrounded by 10 feet of gravel all the way around, minus the rear where it was like maybe 5 feet, and then the trees. I eventually got down the ladder, and quietly went around the front of the garage and around the other side. Nothing. No marks in the stain. No marks in the gravel. No deer, no nothing. That's my story. Cheers. A house slap. Interesting. I think that's the first time I've heard of that. A house slap. No, that's not true. I've heard about that I've heard that story. I've heard the phenomenon of banging in the house in poltergeist stories. Especially, I think it's called the Great Amherst Mystery from Amherst, Nova Scotia, so same province. There's a story of a poltergeist, which is a mysterious phenomenon. I'll get into that another time. Could be, well, there's lots of theories about what it could be. But in this story, there were big bangs on the house, and people could hear it outside and stuff. And so that's what the house slap reminds me of, poltergeist stories. All right, next one is Rednecker C8760, 3 years ago. I'm in the bush all the time alone, often cutting firewood, or just exploring. I've had some awful feelings in the middle of the bush, outside Salmon Arm, British Columbia. I've never had an experience, but felt like I was close to one. Same valley as the 3 missing women. I've been here all my life. It's unnerving, to say the least. So the 3 missing women he's referring to is from my British Columbia Triangle series. There is a valley in the northern Okanagan, and there's 2 parallel roads. One's Salmon River Road, and the other one is called... I can't recall right now. But there was 3 women that vanished from the same road, and one of them was Ashley Simpson, this young lady in her 30s, I think, early 30s, and she vanished. They've actually since solved her disappearance. She was murdered by her boyfriend. Or allegedly, at least. That's what I think he was convicted of it. So that's what happened to her. Another lady was Deanna Wirtz. I think she was a native lady, and she vanished while hiking with her dog. And I think her dog came back, but she was never found again. And as far as I know, her disappearance has never been solved. And the last one, her name was Tracy Genero. She was a teenage girl. She actually disappeared in Vernon, which is nearby, but her remains were found on the property of these people whose son, named Curtis Sagmoen, was, I think he was addicted to crystal meth, and he kept on having these, he would get prostitutes to come to the property, and he would kind of terrorize them. And a lot of people thought that the 5 women that kind of missing from the northern Okanagan mysteriously in that time, they thought that he had murdered them all, and we since know that's not the case. Curtis Sagmoen died quite recently in a hotel, but we know that Ashley Simpson was murdered by her boyfriend, probably. And there was another woman, Nicole Bell. I think her remains were found in Salmon Arm, and I don't think it was necessarily linked to Sagmoen. But anyway, I'm sorry. So Salmon River Road is where Sagmoen's property is, but Deanna Wirtz and Ashley Simpson vanished on Yankee Flats Road. That's what it's called, Yankee Flats Road. And I mean, talk about weird experiences in the bush. When I went to go film there, I got one of the creepiest feelings I've ever felt. Inexplicable. I don't know why, but it was really, really odd. I convinced my dad to come with me to film this place, and he felt the same thing. We were both filming. He was doing a drone, and we were out there filming, and we got back into the car, and I'm like, "Did you feel like something was weird about that place?" And he's like, "Yeah, totally." Like, I didn't want to say anything, but it was a really odd experience there. Really dark feeling. Like, the best way I can describe it is the feeling of being watched by somebody you can't see, but who does not want you to be there. That's kind of what it felt like. Okay, and that's it for now. I'm sure I have many more comments on strange experiences in the woods, but I didn't want this to be a 3-hour video, so I decided to kind of cut it here. And while I go through more comments, I'm sure I'll find more stories on the same topic in the future. But that's it for now. Again, if this is the first time you've seen one of these videos in this format, please let me know what you think. I've got mixed reviews. Most people like it, some people don't. But I think I'm going to make videos like these here and there, not all the time, just to kind of prove that I'm not AI, and to be honest, they're fairly easy to make. So sometimes if I'm in a crunch for time, I think I'll make videos like these. But anyway, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.